Okay, my informative speech is going to be over calibrating equipment. I'm going to list 3 ways that equipment is tested and how it's used in everyday life. Calibrating equipment is important and it can save lives. It can be simple, but it can also be difficult, especially if equipment is broken or it's out of tolerance. I work at a calibration company. I've learned a bunch of stuff since working there. And first, I'll tell you about what it means to calibrate equipment. Calibrating equipment is not always simple. It can be hard work, especially mentally, but sometimes we get broken or out of tolerance equipment. Out of tolerance is whenever an equipment comes in, it's got a specific range that it has to be testing. Most of the equipment that we get in is easy, but it still takes time because of the amount of test points that we have to do. Sometimes when we get a whole bunch of equipment in, it can be overwhelming. A bunch of times we get a bunch of easy equipment, but it comes in big batches. And especially with my place, we don't have enough technicians, so when we have a bunch of pile up, it can be overwhelming because there's not enough people to complete it. Next, the equipment that is typically tested in our area, most of it is related to refineries and all the plants around here. I test pressure gauges and meters. Pressure shows the amount of PSI or pressure that is running through a line, and it's mainly used in process operating. Something that pressure sensors are used for is like your tire pressure sensors in your car. And then meters will test stuff such as current, voltage, resistance, stuff like that. These are both mainly refinery related. About 70% of the equipment that comes in at my job is coming from the refinery, but the other 30% can be coming from electricians, plumbers, contractors, any trade job really. There are also things in your home that can be calibrated. Almost every home has a carbon dioxide or monoxide sensor and also smoke detectors. All of these should be tested to make sure that they're working to go off at the right level. There's a certain level that they should be sensing at. Most people don't know to have these calibrated, and if you don't, it could cause you harm. Next is how the equipment is tested. Most of the time we'll test the equipment in a lab. This lab has to be temperature and humidity controlled. The climate can affect the readings or the functions of the equipment because it can cause inaccurate readings and creating a messed up calibration. The test equipment that we use to calibrate these units have to also be calibrated yearly. This is to make sure that the accurate simulation is created. Otherwise, this could also mess up the readings. Next is how or what we use to test this equipment. We use extremely accurate simulators and objects to test, such as little gauge blocks or calibrators. And if these equipments, if they're off, they can affect the readings of the units that we're testing. We have to test a bunch of different test points to make sure that the low end, the middle end, and the high end are all in tolerance. To make sure that, for example, even if the low end is in tolerance, sometimes the high end can be out. So today I told you about 3 things on how to calibrate equipment, how it isn't simple sometimes, how the certain equipment is tested, and how the calibration is done. Thank you for listening to this speech, and I hope you all learned something new.